Surprised and disappointed that the member from Dunedin was unable to make a contribution longer than the modest one that he made, and in the course of which he spent much of the time speaking about mana and about a surfeit of support coming from Dunedin to help in the mana election, because we certainly have an awful lot of Labour Party activists in Dunedin. Well, if that's to be the tenor of that member's contribution, let me take issue with the fact that we have a surfeit of Labour Party supporters in Dunedin able to help in the Mana and by-election, and contrast that with the fact that a fellow called Joe Butterfield has just been appointed as the chief executive of the Southern DHB. Now, what does that... He comes from Timaru. That man comes from Timaru, 200 kilometres from Dunedin, 400 kilometres, Mr Speaker, from the town of Invercargill that you know so well, 400 kilometres, no air link, and this is a man who's well into his 70s. And what does that say for the quality of National Party hack in Dunedin? That the Minister of Health thinks that the National Party hacks in Dunedin are all of such low standard that he's got to appoint a very experienced man, I must admit, from 200 kilometres further north. Well, enough of that. Let's speak. Oh, about Mana. All I would say about Mana is that the turnout in Mana exceeded the turnout in Mount Albert, that the party vote for the Labour Party in Mana exceeded the party vote for the Labour Party in the 2008 election, that whenever you have a by-election there's always a lesser turnout than there is in a general election, therefore there's always a lesser majority than there is in the general election before or after. It happens time and again. You can go through any by-election. One could go to Taranaki King Country and find the same thing. What's that? There's only one winner in the Taranaki King Country by-election. True, he came to this house in a tractor that he failed to stop and went up the stairs in, but there was only the one winner. The Labour Party did not win Taranaki King Country. We came second, and there's no place for second in politics. We consider Taranaki King Country to be a dreadful loss. Mana, on the other hand, was not. We won, you lost, eat that. Now, I don't know if I'm quoting anyone. I wonder if my memory, who last said that? What seat were they in? What reaction did it cause around the country? Was there a strike by capital? I think there was, but probably not in this case. Probably not in this case, Mr. Chairman. Here's some serious remarks about electoral reform.
Please, yeah.
This legislation is actually pretty modest. It doesn't do a lot, but it does some stuff that's really rather interesting, including, for example, moving us towards electronic enrolments. And I think that's pretty smart. One thing is going to follow like night follows day as soon as we get to electronic enrolments, and it is that people will ask the question, why can't I enrol on election day? Or actually, someone will ask, why can't I enrol after an election day, before the special votes are counted, and so on. People will push the boundaries, and that's been part of history. We used to close the electoral rolls 28 days before, in order to get the roll printed. It was a lovely excuse. We have to close the roll 28 days before in order to print the roll, because unless you can see that you're on the printed roll, we wouldn't be able to issue with voting papers, would we? Except, of course, where there were exceptions, where someone had only just come of age, say, in the week before, in which case they could cast a special vote. And then finally, one bright spark said to themselves, well, if you can cast a special vote for that reason, maybe you can cast a special vote for the fact that you've only just gone on the roll in general a week before. And so, one way or another, after a lot of argy-bargy through the 90s, the enrolment closure period moved from 28 days out to 5 p.m. the day before. And still, in the last election, 20-something thousand, was it 23, 25, 27,000? I can't remember. Let's say 25,000 people, about the population, adult population of Timaru, went to the trouble on election day of going down to the booth, asking for their name to be looked up, finding that their name was not to be found in the roll, asking for a special vote, being given a special vote, filling in the special vote, putting the special vote in the ballot box, and having that special vote not counted, only because they were not on the roll. 25-odd thousand New Zealand, maybe 23,000. So under-enrolment, even though we have high levels of enrolment by some standards of some jurisdictions, under-enrolment continues to disfranchise folk. And we need to be preoccupied by that. So moving to electronic enrolment is a damn good idea. But it does then beg the question about whether one can enrol on election day. And if you can enrol on election day, then the question arises, can a person enrol and vote? And of course the administrators will say, boy, we're busy enough already. But then as administration gets easier and easier and we move to a more and more straightforward and electronic approach to life in general, including one day electronic voting, then of course the idea of electronic enrolling and voting at once will be plausible, and the minute it's plausible it will be demanded. So we're on a bit of a journey here, and this legislation takes us one step further. Earlier speakers have spoken of the value of a mostly agreed electoral system, There are periods in our history, including one recently, when the electoral system, the law around the electoral acts or various pieces of legislation that we use, including parliamentary rules, have not been agreed across the House. And there is always going to be some argy-bargy. There will always be a viewpoint from, say, the ACT party that there should be absolutely no restriction ever again on anyone doing, say, television advertising, because that's just horrible. And if someone's extremely rich and wants to spend a lot of money buying an election result, stupid enough to spend their money on that, says the ACT party, then they should be allowed to, because that's what a liberal society looks like. And there are other people who hold the view that it is best that we don't have people winning elections on the basis of how rich they are, but rather on the basis of the contest of their arguments and whether their arguments stack up in the views of the majority. So there will always be differences, but it is really important that we get a significant measure of agreement, and we haven't always had so. Indeed, over the 28-day enrolment rule of 93, 96, 99, way back then, there were some terrible debates in this House about that. And then when we got ourselves into the MMP debate around the sort of 92-3 or 92-3 period, we had some incredible debates then too, Mr Chairman, Mr Speaker. But what I'd like to say is that this legislation and the legislation we've got coming up later this week is now a significant measure of agreement, at least between the two major parties. And I do acknowledge that minor parties hold other views, and I'm respectful of those. But equally, I think minor parties would acknowledge that it's good that the bulk of us have got a rough measure of agreement about what electoral law should be like, because it is so important, because it is part of our constitution. All I would say, there goes the ACT Party position. There goes the ACT Party position. I told her what it was, and minutes later she, having returned from urgent public business, walked into the chamber, and like the puppet she is, out it came. Oh, just what you'd expect from the ACT Party. Ma'am, it's good to see you here. Just another person from Dunedin. It's great. And in fact, there's not a lot of people left in Dunedin North during the midweek, because half of them are up in the House here, Mr Chairman. We've got a significant measure of agreement across the House. I want to add my thanks to the Minister of Justice, Honourable Simon Power, and indeed to the National Party caucus for their contribution to that better measure of agreement. Not great agreement, but much, much better, and we're, I think, probably a better nation for that better agreement. Thank you.
Mr Speaker. Stuart.